Okay, this is the third video in making a coil pot. This is my coil pot as I left it. I just scratched getting ready for the next coil and put some water on it so it would get very soft. The pot itself is leather hard. I couldn't squeeze it down here, I really can't move it. So the first thing I want to talk about is how we would clean up the sides. I'm going to show you a few techniques on how to smooth out your pot. There's a couple of different kinds of smoothing that you might want to do. First, for us to really get this smooth or uniform, to get out any dents or bumps that are in the clay, what we need to do is determine what kind of smoothing we're doing. If it's small superficial things, maybe you would use your finger. You might be able to paddle some things. The paddles have a curve to it. If the paddle's clean, we might be able to paddle something and get a smoother surface. We might use our metal rib and we might first scrape some clay off if there's some high spots. We could lightly remove a very thin layer of clay, and then that will expose where the smaller pieces are. Or when I do this, you might see there's spots that it doesn't touch. Those spots are lower. One really good way to uniform a surface, though, seems very counterintuitive, but it's actually to scratch the surface. So this area here, that when I ran the rib across it, you can see that this area is dented in too much in relation to these two spots. It's kind of a flat spot. So what I need to do is, if I scratch this area thoroughly, and this I am scratching a little bit deeper, and I'm scratching over and over again in the same spot. What this does is it kind of lowers the high spots and it creates like a little bumpy surface. If I just spray a little bit of water on it, and now if I use this same rib, be very careful when you clean this clay off to clean away from the edge. If I use the same rib to smooth the surface now, all the extra clay, those little chunks, will fill in those gaps. And you can get a really smooth surface this way very quickly by first scratching it, which helps level it out. And then all this excess clay can kind of fill those gaps in. And so I often will do the entire pot this way, and it just really gives a much more uniform surface. It doesn't take too much time. So again, if it's too wet, the pot will be too wet to do this. And it will make the pot a little bit wetter when you do it because you're adding water. So we do want to wait for our pot to truly be dry. But now you can see this area is much smoother than it was. It looks something more like this or like this. It only took a few minutes. I didn't have to focus on each individual dot. I just did the whole area. As you spin your pot, you will notice that some parts maybe stick out more than other parts, or there are bumps. If we're removing a large amount of clay, so for example, there's a bump right here. If I want to shave that down, there's another tool we can use. It's called a Sureform or a rasp. That's what this tool is. And if you drag it one direction, it's like a cheese grater, and it will shave off a very small amount of clay. We want to make sure we do this over the table, or if we get these on the ground, we want to pick them up because they make the floor really dirty very quickly. But I can lightly shave this. And I find doing this over the entire pot also helps really make it uniform. I tend to do this vertically more often, or go down, up or down, because I feel like I can really get a nice curve to my pot. And I'm not worried about the surface because I'll kind of do that scratching, smoothing thing that I just showed you afterwards. What I'm looking to do with this is to get this curve. If I'm looking for a smooth curve, to get that curve nice. Now I notice I have a nice curve here. It kind of goes flat here and it's curved there again. I might want to lower this down a little bit, and I can go down like this. Up and down doesn't work. It only works in one direction. And so that's another way to smooth the surface. After you're done with that, you could scratch the surface lightly this just helps to level things out a little faster. You don't need to scratch it very deep because there's not really any dents from this. But then if I just a light mist of water, so little water when we're hand building. Then I can go back with this rib, either horizontally or vertically. I find standing up when I do this sometimes goes a little faster. Again, when you clean this clay off, clean away from the edge. Otherwise you're prone to cut yourself. The more acute you keep this angle, it will take off less clay and it will leave a smoother surface. If you're trying to remove clay, a right angle will remove clay, but an acute angle will compress the clay and give you a very satisfyingly smooth surface, to the point where it almost has like a shine to it. So you can see in that area where I was working, it's much, much smoother there than let's say it is somewhere else. And so now I'm going to just go over this pot and smooth it out. Sometimes it's nice to flip it over, to move it to the edge, because I'm going to clean up this bottom edge. A lot of times when I clean this bottom edge up, I might hold the pot in my hand and just kind of pull down and kind of get that line nice and clean. If you wanted this to kind of just curve right into the bottom, you can see that that is a way to remove that clay very quickly. There are some of them that are longer that you can kind of bend to the right shape. Again, it's a cheese grater that only kind of goes one way. And so this one's a little bit longer and straighter, and it's gonna work out maybe a little bit better for the shape that I want. And you can see I'm just kind of curving this down. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit and just go over my entire pot and smooth it out, and I will slow it back down when I'm done. So I spent about 10 minutes cleaning this up, and you can see that the surface itself is much, much smoother. I could obviously do more. I'm gonna leave it like this for now. On this pot, I'm gonna finish, like I said, by making like a jug with a handle. But while I can still get in there, I'm gonna be putting a face on my project. So I'm gonna feel for what side should be the face. I'm kind of feeling for if there's one side that's softer than the other. Feels like maybe here. So I'm gonna make a face out of this. So I am going to alter the shape a little bit to make a face. This is not a demonstration of how to make a face. It's just, I want my pot to be a jug that has a face. So here is my coil pot. It still isn't cleaned up. You can see there's quite a little bit of work to do. I'm gonna leave some of it rougher because I kind of like it not being smooth, but there's these little tiny things I need to clean up, but it's too wet. So I'm gonna let it dry a little bit and then I'll go back and I will finish this guy. But you can see that the majority of the coil pot being smoothed out is still the same. There's little things I need to clean up as it dries. But you can see there's a very clean surface here. And then there'll be a spout. I'll clean that up a little bit with my handle. So that is your project. It again needs to be 6 inches tall, 6 inches wide. It needs to go out and it needs to go back in at the very minimum, or in and then go out.